Yeah, good evening, Banteji. This is Samir from India.
Good evening or good day.
Thank you. There is little disturbance in the outside environment. Sorry for that. The question is that the 28 Buddhas prior to the 28 Buddhas prior to the contemporary Lord Buddha, which is Siddhartha Gautama, is there a reference in the suttas about the 28 Buddhas prior to the present Lord Buddha?
Yeah, I'm not sure that there are any from the word of the Buddha. There certainly are from commentaries, but we do know there have been previous Buddhas from the word of the Buddha, in that he himself talked about when he was a hermit called Sumedha in the time of Dipankara the Buddha, one of those 28 Buddhas. And the concept, the idea of the bodhisattva is there, that there are these beings who make, on meeting a Buddha, they make their aspiration to become a Buddha in the future, and then they go along this path practicing to become a Buddha. So there definitely is the concept there of the bodhisattva, or the bodhisattva is a more commonly used word. The actual names of all those Buddhas, I don't think the Buddha himself mentioned, but certainly other commentators have, and it's generally accepted that there have been many Buddhas in the past, and obviously the next Buddha we call the Maitreya Buddha. I think there is some mention of him in the Tripitaka. What I would guard against is that very common perception that, well, because there will be another Buddha, the next Buddha, I'm going to hang loose, go easy with my practice until the next Buddha. Maybe and that's another way of saying, I'm just going to enjoy myself until the next Buddha. Because people find the practice hard, it involves some letting go, renunciation, putting forth effort, and sometimes the obstacles make people feel tired or weighed down because they've also got their other attachments to family, work, the world. So you quite often hear this, they say, oh, I'm going to make enough merit so I'm reborn with the next Buddha, and then all I have to do is hear one talk and I'll become enlightened, that kind of thing. But all the teachers I've lived with have warned against that, because who can guarantee when your next birth will be, where you'll be, and whether you'll meet the Buddha or not? That's a big call, and I don't think most people, they don't have the power to determine that. So don't wait for the next Buddha and the next life. Practice this life. Use your time right now to practice. I think if the Buddha was here, that's what he would be encouraging. That's what you can get from the words in the Tripitaka. He would encourage you to use your time now while you have it to practice the Dhamma.
Sadhu Lumpo, we have a few questions in the chat box. The first one is from Valerie. The question goes like this: how do I deal with an acute shyness that creates fear of meeting people? How does this fit into suffering?
Yeah, well, it's a very common habit many people have. There are sort of practical steps you can take. One is you might have to consider what is your obligation, your duty in life. I don't know who you are and what your situation is, but there may be certain things you have to do to help your family, or to do with your earning a living, or living in this world. There may be things that require you to meet people, and you don't like it, you don't want to do it, but you say, well, this is my obligation or my duty. Duty is a word we use in Buddhism sometimes. can be quite useful just to say, well, it's my duty. I don't really want to do it. I wouldn't do it if I had a choice, but I have to because it's my obligation, my duty, or my responsibility, so I'll do it. And you get up the strength to do what you don't really want to do. You have the timidity or the fear of meeting people, but you overcome it or temporarily by making yourself do your duty. So that may be doing something for the benefit of others. So, maybe you have a child and your child needs help in some way and you have to meet people to do that. So you're overcoming your fear by doing it for your child or for your friend or for your parent or for somebody. Often we find it harder to do it for ourselves. So doing it for others is easier perhaps. Also just getting to know yourself, getting to know this particular fear you have, where it comes from, what stimulates it, what brings it up, and then having some strategies when it arises. Have things that help to calm you down. So if you do, for example, breath meditation, if you're in a situation where you have to meet people, it's necessary, you don't want to, but you have to, well, calm yourself first by bring up the mindfulness, use the breathing meditation, that kind of thing. Often we have to go to our fear, meaning we have to put ourselves in a way where we can study and learn from our fear and overcome it. And sometimes you just have to push yourself. If you can see the fear as an obstacle to you, it's causing you stress, and it would be nice, if you have the idea, it would be nice to be free from this fear, well then maybe you have to push yourself to face up to that fear, go through it over and over again, bring up the mindfulness, contemplate. The feeling is just a feeling, it's temporary. What is temporary is not really a self or you, it's just a temporary feeling. It may have some emotion, some negative emotion with it, but it arises, it ceases. And you keep contemplating it, pushing yourself to see it, contemplate it until it fades and gets less. Many, many people have done that in the world. They've overcome various fears of different things, situations, people, places, by contemplating, establish mindfulness, contemplating over and over again until they start to realize it's something they can let go of. And that can help as well. Just remind yourself, everything can be let go of. Nothing is fixed or permanent, even if it seems that way.
Sadhu Lumpu. Next question is from 5 Precepts. Kindly explain what is the difference between samadhi and samata?
Well, traditionally we talk about meditation, or bhavana, the cultivation of the mind, two aspects. Samata, which means developing calm through practicing, training in mindfulness on an object. And there's many different meditation objects you can use, but you could use the breath, for example. And as mindfulness of the breathing improves, you're able to sustain or maintain mindfulness, mindful awareness, or pay attention to the breath over and over again, more and more. Then you experience calmness, tranquility of body and mind. And the results is samadhi arises, and you might call that samata. But vipassana, the other aspect, the other side of meditation, cultivating wisdom and insight, also requires the practice of samadhi, and usually it is done together in the sense that training the mind in mindfulness. You can turn your mind to contemplate as you're doing that, and the contemplation of what we call vipassana, contemplating or developing insight into impermanence, for example, also supports your samatha, because if you're seeing thoughts, feelings, emotions, sound, sights, taste, smells as impermanent, that helps your mind to let go and go back to its object better and quicker and more efficiently. So really samatha and vipassana support each other. But sometimes, and for some characters, some people, they find that developing insight is something they do all the time, and it leads their meditation. It doesn't mean to say they're not developing samata, it just means the insight is prominent in what they're doing, and they maybe do a lot of contemplation, and as the mind becomes brighter, more firmly established, more stable, more settled, then they can maybe cultivate states of samatha more deeply. Other people begin and focus much more on samatha and maybe don't contemplate much to begin with, but as their samatha improves and the mind becomes more stable, they experience more samadhi, then they turn to contemplate. If you attain one-pointedness, in one-pointedness you tend to just be aware of one object of mind. But as you emerge from one-pointedness, then you experience the normal experience of a human being, sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, thoughts, feelings, emotions. And the idea is you use your one-pointed state of mindfulness to contemplate and develop insight. And they reinforce or support each other. They're like two friends. Samatha, vipassana, calm and insight, they support each other. They deepen each other. So they're not mutually exclusive, they're not enemies, they're not, I do one, I don't do the other. They really do support each other. They're the one mind. It's only the one mind you train. So that's something I would recommend to remember, whatever you're doing, whether you're doing what you call samatha or you're doing what you call vipassana, the other one is not far away, it's there as well.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question is from Masuka. Dear Ajahn, during meditation I have general observation of the breath or the rising and falling of the abdomen, but I can't find a permanent spot to stay with. How do I find the one point to observe?
Keep looking, keep doing it until you find there's somewhere that you can keep your attention more easily, more satisfactorily than anywhere else. Eventually that point will emerge and you'll feel good. There'll be a noticeable better feeling there than anywhere else, and you'll find you can more successfully keep your attention there more than anywhere else. So in the beginning we do experiment a bit, we try this, we try that, we move our attention around the body, around the breath perhaps. We even try different meditation objects. But sooner or later you've got to settle down, and what guides you there is what's worked for you the best of all. What spot, whether it's the tip of the nostrils, the chest, the abdomen, what meditation object, the breath, or contemplation of parts of the body, or the recollection of death, or there are different meditations you can use as well. What has worked for you that brought your mind to a state of calm, peace? You found, the best meditation you've ever had usually is giving you a clue as where you need to develop more. You may not be able to repeat it every single time, but it's giving you the idea of what you need to develop. So in your case, if you found the abdomen is the most easiest point for you to be aware of, it's brought you the most sense of continuity of awareness, sense of peace. If that's worked the best for you in the past, we'll carry on with that. You have to go by results, don't you? You have to go by what's worked for you in the past and then continue developing that.
Sadhu Lumpur, the next question. If there is someone that I have done wrong deeds to before, but no longer keep in touch, should I go look for the person and apologize?
Depends how bad the deed was that you did to them. If it was only a little bit bad, maybe you don't need to go and find them, but you mentally ask for forgiveness and spread thoughts of kindness to them. If it was something more serious that you believe may be actually quite serious negative karma for you, and may have built up a pattern of hostility between you and that person, then maybe you try more to solve it by going and apologizing, asking for forgiveness in person if you can. So it depends who the person is as well. Like, you know, the people who you make the most serious bad karma with, if you're hostile or hurt them, are people with morality. So monks and nuns who keep the Vinaya training, lay practitioners who keep the precepts and have developed a lot of merit and good qualities in their practice. If we leave that undone, we've hurt them, we've harmed them in some way, you leave that undone, that can be quite an obstructive karma that keeps reoccurring in your practice, blocking you. So, particularly in monasteries and in Buddhist communities, you know, we encourage people, if they realize or remember that they've really hurt or done something inappropriate or unskillful towards someone who's got precepts, maybe they have meditation skills as well, maybe they're even a well-developed advanced practitioner, or quickly go and apologize, quickly sort it out. Don't leave it undone, because that will be quite powerful obstructive karma. If the person's passed away, we'll do it mentally in your meditation. But if it's something much more vague, you know, I think I said something to somebody once, or I had a bit of a clash with this person, but it was only once and it wasn't really that serious, you know. There are degrees of how much we might have hurt each other, and so you have to reflect first. Well, how serious is this problem or this bad karma I've created, and who was it, and what the circumstances were? And that may help you determine whether you have to really go and seek them out. As I said, the worst person you don't want to hurt in any way or disrespect or harm is an arahant. You know, that's very bad negative karma. We don't have a Buddha alive, but there may be arahants. So I remember living with Lungta Mahabua. On one occasion, there was a junior monk who had faith and was living with him and gave him a leg massage, but he was very unskillful. And during this leg massage, whether it was his nails or he's just overzealous, he actually injured the teacher, Ajahn Mahabua, who's considered enlightened, a good monk, pure monk. And I think he drew blood, and the other monks immediately asked him to leave and said, oh, maybe you shouldn't do this. You know, just perhaps he wasn't a good meditator. And then he went away, and eventually he disrobed. This is over a long period of time. Eventually disrobed, went back to his lay life. And then one day, Ajahn Mahabua told one of his trusted assistant monks, he said, can you go and find that monk, the one who hurt me, physically hurt me when he was massaging me? He needs to come and ask forgiveness formally, because he never did that. And they didn't know where the monk was. He was now a layman. They didn't know where he was living. This monk had to do a kind of detective work and ask around and follow trains of people and connections until he could find out where that ex-monk lived, his family, his address, go and find him. And it turned out that monk was dying. He was seriously ill and he was dying. And Ajahn Mahabua actually knew that, even though he hadn't seen him physically or been told about him. He just knew from his meditation, this monk is dying, and if he dies without having come to ask forgiveness, that's going to be very bad karma for him. And out of compassion, he sent his monk to go and find the ex-monk, encourage him to come back. I mean, you can't force someone to do that, but he encouraged him, said, it'd be good for you to do this. And he was happy to, because he still had faith in Ajahn Mahabua. So as a layman who was dying, physically very weak and ill, he came to see Ajahn Mahabua, went through a forgiveness ceremony, asked forgiveness, received teachings, cleared the air, so that he could die peacefully and without this very negative karma kind of haunting him or following him into his next life. So that's the compassion of an arahant who has very clear mind. Sometimes he knows who needs to apologize. The rest of us, maybe we're not arahant, so it's all a bit vaguer, but still the principle is there. If you've hurt someone, particularly very strongly, then do something to try and make amends. Apologize, seek them out, try to make amends. That would be the best.
Sadhu Lumpo. The next question is from ST Lee. Lumpo, can you kindly talk a little about opposites like heedlessness against mindfulness, which you mentioned? Does this give rise to dualistic thinking? Is this something that we should avoid so that we think as they are?
Well, this phrase, apamada, heedfulness, is, as I said, it's a catch-all phrase. The Buddha said all the teachings he gave fit into the term heedfulness, just like all the footprints of all the animals in the forest will be able to fit within the footprint of an elephant, because that's the biggest animal. So it's like the biggest Dhamma. It's a Dhamma that covers everything. So it doesn't just cover mindfulness, it also covers wisdom and other good qualities, say like kindness, compassion, all the kind of qualities that we need for developing the path to enlightenment. They all fit within heedfulness, apamada. Obviously, sati is a very central quality. Mindfulness is a very central quality, but it's not exactly the same as heedfulness. But what you find is, the way you develop your practice as mindfulness improves through training in the four foundations of mindfulness, sitting, walking, meditation, and indeed in all postures. As mindfulness improves, then this becomes a foundation for wisdom and understanding, which is what actually cuts off the causes of suffering from the mind. That also improves with mindfulness. They improve together. So you could say heedfulness covers both. You develop mindfulness a lot. The Buddha said, do it a lot, develop it a lot, but then also cultivate wisdom and insight a lot. And this is being heedful. And as mindfulness becomes sharper, more continuous, more refined, wisdom becomes deeper, more profound, and whatever aspect of these five khandhas, body and mind, that we're attaching to or lost in, dualistic thinking, any kind of thinking, whatever, gradually insight is weeding out the delusions of the mind, and we're fulfilling the practice of heedfulness. But obviously there's depths to this, so if you're a beginner or intermediate or you're a very advanced practitioner, maybe your practice of heedfulness will vary sometimes because you're working on something different or on a slightly different or deeper, more profound level perhaps. But the path is the path, so you're cultivating the same things in the end. It's just if you're more advanced, maybe you're better at entering states of samadhi or maintaining states of samadhi. If you're a beginner, maybe you can't do that yet. You just have to work at being a little bit more mindful every day. So it depends where you're at in your practice. But it all comes under the umbrella term of heedfulness, cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path or the Four Noble Truths. This is all being heedful.
Sadhu Lumpo.